Hello, Malachi. Thank you so much for being here today, for accepting to talk to us. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. It's my honor and pleasure to be here, truly.
Um, for people who don't know you, it would be great if you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about you, what you do, where you come from.
Sure. So, my name is Malachi Kanfer. Um, I am a cantor. That's my profession. A cantor in the liberal Jewish world is a member of the clergy. So often at the head of a synagogue where Jews pray, you have the rabbi and the cantor kind of being at the helm. And the cantor's role is to lead all the services. The services are sung and chanted entirely, at least most of the time, in Hebrew, in particular modes and styles. And they can be quite long. So that's a part of my role where I lead all the services, encouraging everyone else to sing too in community. And also, I teach both adults and kids. I officiate at life cycle events like funerals, weddings, births. So it's very cool to be a part of people's lives at all stages. Um, you talk to people in the best of times, the worst of times. That's a really amazing privilege of my job. Um, so that's what I do. What else? I live in New York. I live in Manhattan. The synagogue where I work is in Midtown East Manhattan. So it's really kind of in the heart of Manhattan, which is really cool. There's always a lot going on. Um, and More about me, was raised in Ohio. So I don't know if everyone knows America, but Ohio is kind of in the middle of America. There are a lot of cornfields in Ohio. I grew up in Columbus, so it wasn't like uh, necessarily the country, but I was born and raised in Columbus, Ohio. I also went to college in Ohio. I went to Oberlin College and Conservatory of Music, which is the conservatory in particular is a top-notch school for music and opera and um, yeah. I sang opera for a while, and I pretty quickly uh, transitioned into the role of cantor. I went to school for it, and here I am.
When did you start stuttering, and how did stuttering impact your life?
Sure. So, um, I think I had hesitations and uh, blocks in my speech pretty early on, but it was never really an issue, and it was never severe until I was 7 years old. And what happened is that my mom went away on a trip to Israel for a couple weeks. Not my mom's fault. I love my mom. But she went on a trip to Israel for a couple weeks. And I think pretty much as she left on that trip, I just started um, to block up. And I stuttered, and my face would get really contorted and tense, and I couldn't get any words out. Um, and my dad, I was that my dad was there, and my two older siblings were home. Um, but yeah, uh, and then I never stopped. I remember I have this clear picture in my head of like my dad holding my hand as I tried to get words out, and my hand being like really clenched onto his, and his hand being really clenched onto mine, and just not having any answers. And so I went to speech therapy pretty much immediately, I think. My speech pathologist was named Pam Cook, is named Pam Cook. I haven't talked to Pam Cook in a long time, but I loved Pam Cook. And I think a thing that I think is common in these kinds of relationships is that I would sometimes go and talk to Pam Cook for half an hour and not block once, and then and get into the car with my dad and completely lock up again. Um, but yeah, and that work with her was a lot of stuff with, classics, easy onsets, rate work. Um, I don't know how much we explored. I was really young too. I don't know how much we explored kind of, emotional aspects that might have an impact. And I think every time I stopped working with her, or even when I was working with her, a couple months, the goal that we always had was fluency or improvement in fluency, and it was never a thing that I could keep up, which, I know now isn't my fault, but I think back then I probably, uh, it had a big effect on me that, like, I just can't do this. And I don't want to practice these exercises forever. I don't have clear recollections of being bullied as a kid, um, which is great. I think it probably happened a little bit because of stuttering, and maybe I blocked it out. But for the most part, I think people were really kind. Um, I do think it was something I really wanted to hide as much as possible, and I wasn't capable of hiding it, but it affected everything in my life, right? Like I, and it continues to in some ways. As a kid, I was petrified of talking in class and would not talk in class or avoid talking in class. And I think, like, I was a smart kid, and I think it's really hard when you feel like you have something to offer and you can't, or and so I think in a lot of ways, like, I was a smart kid. I remember, like, I got my first A minus in the ninth grade, but that was, I don't know. I think at some point I decided, like, I'm not going to be happy in classes. I'm not going to do anything. And so I think that talking was a big part of it, where I just kind of turned off that academic into, like, I just decided it wasn't important to me because I felt like I couldn't succeed in ways that I wanted to, which sucks. Actually, it really sucks. Um, but yeah, and it's more complicated than that. But talking was a big part of it. Um, so one of the results of that is that I started to sing, and I know we're going to talk about, or we'll probably talk about that. But I think for a long time I kind of turned off parts of myself that were related to that. I turned off parts of myself in which pursuing those parts would mean I was going to have to talk a lot, and went into things where I could sing and not have to, or where I thought I wouldn't have to think about talking as much.
Yeah, that's
Um, and from a personal standpoint, was it a source of depression? Absolutely. Did it affect how I made friends? Sure. Was I afraid to call friends on the phone all the time, especially as a preteen and into that? Yes. Did I avoid asking out girls who I was interested in? Yes. Like, all those classic things. So it was both a huge impact personally and whole like life and path in general.
Yeah, I can only I can only imagine. I think we all have been through those situations in a different extent, of course, because people stutter in a, like some people are more severe than others, and people handle in a different way too. So it's not always easy. And talking about you singing, which is something that I'm very curious about. As a singer, you often so you are very often on stage. How do you deal with like public speaking as part of your singing of your singing career? Because even if you sing, you still usually have to say a few words before singing or sometimes, after singing. How do you deal with this part of having to talk on
Yeah.
stage?
I mean, so it's really interesting. I mean, I can talk about professionally. I can talk about musicals and opera stuff. Um, Professionally, right now, it is um, a part of my job. Like, it's a big part of my job to talk in public too. Whether it's like I give eulogies at funerals and officiate at funerals and teach a lot. And I have grown in and leaned into feeling comfortable with it more and more, and it's still hard. Um, but earlier, like I'll start when I first began to sing. I was in musicals in high school, and those often had talking lines too, which I was terrified of. I was actually, do you know Titanic, the musical?
The musical, I know the film.
Oh, you're missing out on the musical. It's so good.
Oh, wow, I've never watched it.
So I was in like a professional staging of Titanic, like the whole stage lifts up on hydraulics as the ship sinks. It's like very dramatic. We did not have that. I think we just kind of like slid off like bleachers or something. I don't remember. Anyway, I was in Titanic the musical. I was the captain of the ship in Titanic the musical, and it turns out that that role, like, he sings a bit, but he actually has the most speaking lines in the show, I think. And they cast me in this role. The director, the musical director, who was my choir teacher in high school, who I loved, and the director of the theater department at my high school were both amazing, and expressed um, huge amounts of confidence in me, and in a life changing way by casting me in all these roles where I talked, in ways that I don't think like I can ever repay. So right, so I was so you know I change words here and there. Like I remember I went into the script and I crossed out words here and there, because I didn't want to set that on stage. But I think I practiced over and over again in rehearsals, and for the most part in the show, I was pretty fluent. Um, Also in high school, I auditioned for a play. Um, I think in particular, it was about um, four men with mental handicap, with intellectual and some emotional um, disabilities who live in the same house called The Boys Next Door, and about the people who helped to care for them. And I was one of those men named Norman, And I think we all kind of thought, oh, if I don't know if this is, I think we all felt, and it doesn't sound correct now that I'm saying it, it doesn't sound politically correct as I say it. I think we felt that if I stuttered as part of the role, it could be in character in some way. And I don't think I ever, in all the rehearsals and in all of the performances of that show, because the pressure was totally off, um, I didn't, I don't think I blocked once in rehearsal or in performance. So that was a very interesting experience. With singing in other ways, like I remember in high school, I sang in like at like coffee shops and bars all the time and open mics, and I don't think I spent a lot of time like introducing songs. But if I had wanted to, I would have avoided it then and not introduced them.
Do you feel comfortable giving interviews, going on TV to talk about your music?
Well, I think you might be thinking that I'm more famous than I am, but for those times that I've been interviewed, um, so I remember I was interviewed on the radio. I don't know, in 2018. Um, and yeah, I was nervous, and actually, it was really hard. I love the host. I love the host of that interview. He's a great guy, but he kept on. I was trying to express myself, and he interrupted me. He kept on asking more questions as I tried to answer, and that was very hard on me. And back then, I wouldn't have had the tools to say, "Hey, Paul, like Paul Bass, I love you if you're listening. I really do." Like I wouldn't have had the tools to say, "Hey, Paul, I just need some more time to answer this question, please." Just, which is something I would be totally comfortable with saying now, but back then, no. Um, so it's cool to see growth in that way. Um, I wouldn't have had the self. I don't know if it's self esteem or confidence to be able to own my own time or space in an interview until recently. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, which actually make me curious what happened recently that gave you the confidence to be more, let's say open about it.
Um, I think a couple things. I there are a couple things. The first thing I'm going to talk about is that I was on a meditation retreat for rabbis and cantors in 2018. It was a program where you go on all these retreats over the course of a couple years. And on one of the retreats, um, one of the teachers was talking about how he experienced chronic pain for years and years and years. And the only way that he found relief from that pain, in some way anyway, was to open himself up to it and address it as a friend and a teacher. And, I was in the midst of a meditation retreat, and, you're kind of opened up to all your emotions. And I began to sob because I was thinking about my talking, my stutter, and I was like, how can I call this thing that has caused me so much pain over the years, and has been just a weight around my neck? Is that the expression? How can I call this really hard thing a friend? How can I call this really hard thing a teacher? But like, I wanted to too, because like you want to come to peace with things. You want to, and I started to sob, and there were other, like I cried basically for a couple days, and that kind of helped to get me on a path towards um, opening myself up to the possibility of accepting myself as someone who stutters. And around that time, I forget the timeline, I was listening to the Stutter Talk podcast, and I talked about this in an article which I wrote a month ago. but I was on my way to officiate at a funeral, and I wasn't excited about it because I was tired, and I thought I'm just going to sit stutter a lot in the funeral, and I won't be able to do the job I want to, and people will be thinking about me and my stutter and not about the person who's passed away. And I listened to this podcast for the first time. I had only really had interaction with one other person in my life who had stuttered up until that point, which is a long time. I think I was probably 28 at the time or 29. Um, and so I was listening to this podcast for the first time, and I heard um, the host, Chaya Goldstein, said that on the podcast. And again, like I hadn't been a person who cried a lot in my life, but I just started to cry in the car on the way to, to the funeral because it was again this moment of like, oh, maybe it's okay if I stutter, which I would never have allowed myself to think. Um, and I also think a big part of this is just like, I had been in therapy for years and years, and I think that helped kind of open myself up to these things too.
Think so too. Well, but it's very, I mean, it's just so great that you have been able to come to terms with it. And it's a process. It's, I don't know, if people really get 100% there in the sense that they fully accept 100%. I guess some people do, but I think it's always something that we have to, from time to time, remember that it's okay to like stutter. But yeah, and going back, yeah, sorry, go
Sorry.
ahead. No, no, it's
No,
okay.
and there's like a balance too. There's like some kind of balance I feel like because like you accept like it's so huge to feel like you can accept it and that's a life-changing thing. And there's also the reality that sometimes like you really do not want to set better, right? Like it's exhausting. Sometimes like my voice gets tired from all the blocks. Sometimes you just wish you didn't. And like that's okay too. And acknowledging that is okay too, right?
Exactly.
So there's both acceptance and like, whatever.
Do you think that music has had any impact on your fluency? If so, like in which way do you think it had some impact?
For me, I don't think it's had a direct impact on my fluency at all, except that it's it opened doors for me initially to have experiences that gave me a lot of confidence and that gave me it opened doors for me to have experiences where actually I had to talk in public, even if I didn't want to. And having those experiences over and over again um, helped my fluency overall, but I don't think it was because of music. I don't think that music itself helped my fluency. I will say, um, in like opera, I always felt like I had, and in the music which I do now, in it's called Chazanut, Jewish music, I've always felt like I've had a little advantage in that there have been times in my life where, like in high school and in college, if I had to give a presentation in class, often I would bring in my guitar and I would sing the presentation. Um, Automatic A plus, by the way, for those of you out there, but something I wish I didn't have to do. Um, but I felt like it gave me an advantage in some particular things in cantorial music and also in opera where there are these parts of operas that are kind of half spoken half sung, and I always felt like those things came really easily to me because it's something that I did all the time anyway.
That's cool. That's great. And what is the biggest challenge you have had with stuttering, and what did you learn with it?
Hmm. I think the biggest challenge um, is the internal cap that I put on myself for a long time of what I could be capable of. Um, and um, I think that sucks. That's really hard. Um, and so trying to overcome that has been a really big part of recent work that I've done. And I, I guess I also just think just like the maybe it's not a big thing, but just the challenge of living every day as someone who stutters, right? Like just the anxiety that you can feel in every interaction that you have, or with people who you don't know, or um, of making phone calls. And it's just like the pain or exhaustion or frustration of everyday experiences that can be really tough.
Yeah. And what advice would you give to people who stutter?
Um, it's a good question. I've been reading a book on meditation, and one of the things um, it's a book by Rabbi Rabbi Alan Liu, who became a rabbi after being a Buddhist monk for 10 years, I think. And he talks about one of the stages that you reach in meditation, and also this is a stage you can reach through growing up or being in therapy or anything else. But he talks about you realize at some point that the thing that you're the most afraid of or that causes you the most pain or anxiety has the potential to be your greatest strength. Um, and I think with stuttering, that can be really true. Um, so I think doing the trying to work on how to get there has been really helpful and life changing for me. So, not that I think I'm such a great teacher for other people who stutter, but I think that's one thing that's been really life changing for me.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing your ideas, your thoughts, your journey with the stuttering and your singing. If people want to see some of your singing and videos, where can they find?
So, if you search my name on the internet, there's going to be a lot of stuff that comes up. Um, I have I have a channel on YouTube that hasn't been updated in a while, but there's a lot of stuff there. But if you search my name, there's a lot of music that comes up. And actually, we have an album coming out at the synagogue where I work, probably in the next month. So that will be up on Apple Music and Spotify, and a lot of other places. So that's exciting too.
That's really cool. The songs are from who? Did you write the songs?
There are a portion of the songs are songs which I wrote. A portion are covers of other Jewish artists, and there are also some songs that I just like. Like there's a song from the '90s called "Waiting on an Angel" by Ben Harper, I think. Do you know that song?
I think so.
Um,
How? But if you wanna sing a part of it,
it goes, uh, "Waiting on an angel, come to carry me home. Hope you come to see me soon, 'cause I don't wanna go alone. Anyway,
So cool.
it's pretty. Thanks. So there there are songs. So that's a song that sometimes I'll sing like in Hebrew with someone at the end of their life, or anyway. So that's on. They're just songs that I love on it too.
That's really exciting. I will definitely check it out,
Thank
uh,
you.
the album and the videos also. I'm going to subscribe to your YouTube channel, and everyone watching should also subscribe and check it out.
I was thinking also that one thing you learn as a singer in particular is like the thing that people respond to as you sing is when you get the depth, all your emotions out there as you sing, right? Like that's what people respond to. It's like quality of voice, great, like blah 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 blah. People respond to emotion
Exactly.
and the connection that happens with that. And I think when I speak in public, it's actually the same thing. Like people respond to you being honest with your emotions in the moment. Not quite the same thing, but I think when you learn how to be confident in your emotions as a singer and in expressing them, um, I know that I'm most fluent as a public speaker when I'm um, in tune with my emotions in the moment. When what I'm saying is emotionally honest, like I have a much harder time with like reading off the details of a person's biography, but if I'm speaking some emotional truth, like I won't stutter. I don't know. So there's some kind of thing that you learn from singing with that too, I think.
I think so too. I think so too. And to be honest, I'm so happy to be able to have singing as a tool to vent, to express uh, myself. I think it's a huge blessing because we don't need anything. We just need our voice to be able to express ourselves and to get our emotions out when we can't speak. When you cannot use words, sing. So it's
Yeah.
like, yes, at least I have this alternative, which many people don't. So I feel that at least this helps to cope, you know.
Yeah, it's an unbelievable gift.
We are very blessed that we have this gift.
Yeah.
uh Thank you so much, Malachi, for your time, for your, for your openness to share. It's a pleasure to talk to you, to learn more about you. And I just hope that you're going to have a very successful music career with this new album coming up. I think it's going to be a huge success. And when you become very famous, do not forget us, the people that are not famous.
This is, I think, my peak, and I'm happy for it to be my peak. Um, but it's been a complete joy, and it's really nice to talk to you. And yeah, I just thank you for asking me to be on.
Thank you so much.
All right, have a wonderful day. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, gam lecha. Bye.